Hi, this video we're going to talk about group dynamics and influence, specifically the concept of groupthink and some of the associated concepts connected to that. So as we've been talking about for the last few videos, contextual factors matter when it comes to influence, when it comes to conformity, compliance, obedience. It also has an influence on how groups come to make decisions. So when groups make decisions, they often make decisions that the individual members of those groups disagree with. And the question then is, of course, how does that happen? How does a group arrive at a decision that the individual members of that group disagree with? Um, um, this phenomenon, by the way, is something we call groupthink. Groupthink is basically a strong concurrence-seeking tendency that interferes with effective group decision making. So when we say concurrence seeking, it's basically a nod to the idea that people want to go along with the group, and in doing so, they undermine the ability of the group to actually make effective decisions. So groupthink promotes unanimity and it suppresses divergent opinions. And when the unanimity is sort of organized behind a bad idea, and the expression of both criticism of the idea and the suggestion of alternatives gets suppressed, then groups make bad decisions. Now, there are lots of conditions under which groupthink can occur. It can occur when a strong group leader makes their opinion known. So somebody who has maybe, for example, um, um, legitimate power or referent power. Again, if you're a little vague or hazy on those, go back to the previous lecture. We kind of cover those there. But if somebody, for example, has legitimate power or referent power within the context of a group, people may go along with that when that opinion gets expressed, even if the opinion is one that's going to lead the group to make a poor choice. It can also occur, groupthink can also occur if the group is isolated from other viewpoints or alternative information. So the degree to which the group is experiencing a kind of epistemic closure in which they're making their decision in a sort of bubble where they're cut off from alternative perspectives and points of view or information that is really, really essential to informing their choices. So that's groupthink, and that's just a kind of a quick overview of some of the conditions under which we might find groupthink occurring. Now, when a group has a really high degree of cohesion, when a group has a high degree of cohesion, concerns about the group can impact decisions that the group makes. I'll say that again because I think I kind of stumbled over that. So when a group has a high degree of cohesion, right, when they're kind of strongly connected, they're tied socially and interactively, they're tied into those relationships particularly strongly, then concerns about the well-being of the group and the needs of the group can impact the decisions that people within the group make. For example, a need to maintain harmony could override a member's impulse to dissent if they disagree with the direction the group seems to be going, not wanting to cause any kind of discord, not wanting to cause any kind of tension or conflict within the group. They might actually just kind of go along. And when that suppressed idea or when that suppressed impulse actually represents something good and to the benefit of the group, then the group itself is going to suffer. So this goes in both directions. I want to be really, really clear, right? If a group initially favors a viewpoint, then group polarization will result in stronger consensus. And if a group is initially opposed to a viewpoint, then group polarization is going to result in an even stronger opposition. So this is not about the decision necessarily, but rather the strength and the unanimity of the group behind the decision. So when we talk about group polarization, we're talking about how members of a group who are discussing an issue might move toward an extreme version of the positions they held before the discussion began. So people had already had an opinion, but the opinion moves in the direction of becoming stronger as it becomes clear that expressing that stronger version of the opinion helps to build the cohesion and the strength and the bonds within the group. Now, there's a tendency, I think, sometimes to think that all of these dynamics, like polarization, are going to produce negative outcomes for a group. But that isn't necessarily the case, right? Some group processes that lead to unanimity or that lead to conformity can actually be beneficial. One of the many examples is something we call social facilitation, right? So when an individual's performance on a task occurs in the presence of a group that is strong and cohesive, the competency with which that individual performs that task can actually go up, right? So there's an improvement in task performance among individuals when that task performance occurs in the context of a strongly unified group, right? So think of a team, like a sports team, right? The individual members of the team can actually have better performances with regard to their particular skills in the game when the team feels unified, when the team is kind of strong and unified and cohesive. So that's what we call social facilitation, and that very much emerges out of a uniform, unanimous kind of solidarity among group members. I mean, it can produce bad things, right, like groupthink and polarization, but it can also facilitate good things like increased performance by individuals on specific tasks. The other concept that I wanted to kind of throw out there just in the context of this is something else that happens in groups. It's a kind of a problematic dynamic of groups that's called social loafing. Social loafing is the reduction of individual effort that occurs when people work in groups compared to when they work alone. So if you've ever worked on a group project, you've probably experienced some form of this, right? That there's one person who, if they were working alone, would do the necessary work, but because they're working in a group and other people in the group will do that work instead, they just kind of ride on the coattails, so to speak. They just basically coast and benefit from the hard work of other people in the group. This is what we call a collective action problem, or sometimes we call them social dilemmas. And specifically, this social dilemma is something we call a free rider problem. A free rider problem is a situation in which a person's going to pursue their own self-interest because other people will basically make the necessary sacrifices that allow them to approach something rationally. So, like, the reason why people don't vote is because voting is hard, right? For some people more than others, but generally speaking, right, to cast a ballot in an election, you have to know something about the candidates or the issues. You have to get up in the morning or before you come home from work in the afternoon. You have to go to the polling place. You have to, you have to make decisions and choices. And at the end of the day, if you look at the margins that are sort of presented at the end of elections, you can see that the difference between candidate A winning and candidate B losing was more than one vote. So you can reasonably tell yourself that my vote wouldn't matter. And statistically speaking, you're right? For most people in elections, an individual's vote does not matter. But imagine 2/3 of the electorate saying exactly the same thing. right? So 2/3 of the electorate stay home because other people will go to the polls and other people will, mark their ballots and other people will do all of the necessary work. And then you end up in a situation where 1/3 of the electorate is making a decision for everyone. And the outcome is by definition not democratic because it doesn't reflect the collective will of everyone. It reflects the collective will of a small subset of everyone. And that may be consistent with the way that we run elections, but it is not, definitionally, it is not democratic. So social dilemmas basically exist because people see issues as individual level phenomena rather than collective phenomena. And so we get these situations where people just kind of basically benefit from the hard work or the collective others. They engage in social loafing because other people they know will be picking up the slack. So that is another kind of situation in which group dynamics are going to influence individual level behavior. All right, so that should wrap it up for this one. This one was sort of nice and short, I think, relative to some of our other lectures. If you have any questions about this stuff, as always, please let me know. And if not, I will just see you guys next time. Take care.